How's your hair? Hello, everyone. We're live. I think we are live now. Yes, brilliant. Welcome to the second Talent Attraction Channel webinar. Thanks for those who joined the first one a couple of weeks ago with Martin Burns and John Stanners. That went down really well. It's still available on. You can click the old links to watch it if you haven't seen it already. But moving on to this week, we've got just one guest, because this one guest is fantastic enough that he doesn't need anybody else to support him. This week we have Dave Hazelhurst from PH Creative. Give him a wave, Dave. I'll introduce a little bit more in a minute, but I'm just going to do a little bit of housekeeping stuff to start with. Please ask questions, everyone. If you want to ask Dave any questions on the way through, want to ask about some specific things, please do. The bar on the right-hand side means you can do that. There is also an area at the bottom, which I completely forgot about last time, that you can answer questions on. So I prefer it on the right-hand side because it's easier for me to find. If you want to chat along on Twitter or share it on Twitter, there's a hashtag, which is the hashtag TAChannel. By all means, use that as well. And I think other than that, I think we're pretty much there to go. So look, the reason I've got Dave on this show, because doing what I do with talent attraction and that kind of stuff, I'm always looking for sources of inspiration and great ideas about how it's being done. And on a flight to and from Australia last year, I was handed a book that was not on the flight. That was pretty impressive, but by my partner Jen beforehand, which was a book written by Dave and Brian, the two co-founders of PH Creative, and it was called Getting Goosebumps. And I from front to back, I just nodded my head all the way through, because it's brilliant how it brings the principles of marketing as well as some other real life situations into talent attraction. And it spoke to me brilliantly about how it should be done. And this is why sometimes the marketing input into recruitment is a good angle, rather than just purely the recruitment angle alone. So I've got a lot of respect for Dave and what he's got to talk about, and where his angle is. And I love listening to him talk about this stuff, because he talks about it with a lot of energy. So look, Dave, could you please introduce yourself? Give us a little bit of a potted history of what you do, why you do it, and this whole business of talent attraction. We're going to talk a lot about content and how to build an engaging content marketing kind of program, where your kind of standpoint is on this, and where we kind of kick it off from your mindset.
Yeah,
that was about three questions. Come on, good luck with that one.
Yeah. Well, at least I've got the internet in Liverpool now, after someone stole it. I think someone stole the internet for a few hours.
It's on bricks now, is it?
Yeah, it's on bricks. Yeah, it's outside on bricks. But hello, everybody. And Steve, thanks for inviting me on. Looking forward to this. I've actually had people asking me questions behind the scenes and all kinds of stuff going on. I mean, obviously we're based up in Liverpool. Interestingly, we were actually a B2C, B2B agency originally in the world of digital. Yeah. Over the last 4 years or so, we've sort of started working in the sort of employer brand recruitment marketing place, but very much taking principles from B2B, B2C, and saying, hey, why don't we do it this way, and why aren't we thinking about it that way? And, looking at different ways of basically attracting talent, which to me, it's like, basically, the job is the product or service, and we want to get customers kind of thing. That's how it all kind of started. And many, many years ago in a previous life, I worked for Oka House on a RPO, and I was only meant to be there 12 weeks. I was there like 2 years helping them do stuff. And this is going back to, like, I don't know, Jesus Christ, 2004 or something like that, 2000, I can't remember when, whatever it was. And we were using like Google AdWords and stuff like that. My background was search marketing, so I was like, why aren't we doing this, and why do we keep doing it this way, and blah blah blah. And over time, it's just evolved into where we are now. And basically, our sort of ethos has all been around, how do we understand human beings? How do we connect emotionally and rationally? And how do we tell a story that brings them closer to us, I suppose? And that's where it sort of started.
Yeah, good stuff. Yeah, and totally the area that I absolutely believe in as well. The area that what I focused on in this industry for years is how do you make people want to come and talk to you and be part of what you're about? It's recruitment land tends to be a little bit the other way around sometimes, doesn't it? It kind of does things to serve itself rather than serve the customer. And so absolutely. So look, where does it all begin when you sit with a company who have got all sorts of restraints and corporate shenanigans going on, and they want to attract the best talent, but they're usually not quite so agile enough to do it. Where does it all kick off? Where does a good content marketing program come from into the mix?
I think I think a good way of me trying to articulate this is to tell you the steps we would kind of take as if someone was coming on board as to work with us, and maybe some practical stuff that people can take away and try. But it starts with what's the mission for us. So if you were to break our process down, you'd be like, okay, what is it we're trying to achieve? Do we really understand it? Do we empathize with what that is? So it might be, well, everybody at the moment wants tech and digital talent. The whole world wants that kind of thing. It seems like every client we work with, how do we get tech people? How do we get digital people? And then what are the challenges that are in there? And how does it align with what the talent needs are facing forward? What are demands? And also, as an organization, why should somebody in tech or digital be interested in you as an organization? And often we find that a lot of organizations just say the same thing, and so one of the things that we challenge them with is we run a series of workshops to look at various things, and some of the first stuff is it's a little bit EVP-ish, so and there's massive debates around EVP and all this kind of stuff. Yeah.
For another show.
But also, but part of it, I suppose, if you're looking at your employer brand and your EVP, your employer brand sort of is the car that you're driving. The features and benefits is the EVP.
Yeah.
And the experience of driving that car and how it makes you feel is the real essence of why you would go to work at an organization. So we need to try and understand that. Yeah. And if there's two parts of a conversation, the business has got this conversation and is saying these things of what it wants to do and, who it is, its values, its culture, its EVP and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then we've got the people that they want to connect with externally. And, I've been, as a marketing agency, if we go back to B2B, B2C, we would never, ever try and market anything at all without understanding the company, the product, but who's this person here? Who are we trying to speak to? And that all revolves around this persona mapping thing, which I can talk more around. But then we walk into the pub and you've got the company having a conversation and the persona having a conversation with hopes and fears and pains and all this kind of stuff and motivations and behaviors. And what we want to do is try and connect them in the middle so that they start to connect. So it's very much about understanding that mission, understanding the company, what's unique to them, what is the sort of secret thing that you wish, if you were working there, what's the one secret thing that if you're in a pub, you wish everybody knew about what it's like for working in that organization. Yeah. Mostly good, by the way, but obviously honest and authentic. Yeah. And then understand these people. Yeah. And I think in the world of talent, I think over the last couple of years, we've got much, much better at that. So this persona mapping and understanding candidates and their behaviors and hanging out and all this kind of stuff and motivation. I think we've got a lot better at that now. Yeah. And I think that's the first, we go mission, discovery and insights.
Yes.
So they're the first things that we do. Often before we even kick off a project, it's like, how do we influence the business and romance the business and help them understand it? And organizations are at a completely different level of maturity and sort of their resourcing models and sizes and scope and challenges. Like, we work with Nationwide Building Society, and when we first started working, they gave us a 120-page governance document for social media. We're like, oh my God, what is this thing? The sense is like, like, what is this thing? Yeah. But with them, we're now 5 years in.
Yeah.
They've done incredible. They're at 98% direct hiring. They don't spend any money on job boards. Yeah. And I remember spending 2 days and I had to go round trying to get people, stakeholders on side, communications, marketing, security, information security. It was like loads of them. We go around it, basically romancing them to sort of get them on side and help them understand it.
Yeah.
And that can be a challenge, That can be a challenge.
Is that a process of looking for advocacy inside the business or just looking for stories inside the business?
Yeah, so that's a really good point. So in a lot of cases, it's first of all advocacy and support internally to go down the path of this employer brand thing and talent attraction. We need to get on board with this. And it's, even now we speak to companies. I mean, obviously I'm not going to name names, but there's companies we work with now who are literally like, huge global companies who are really only they've become so reliant on either certain job boards or certain agencies, that they're just seeing the costs. They're like, hold on a second, Now we're spending millions and millions of pounds here. Is there a better way of doing this?
Yeah.
And then you have the opposite, which is companies that have invested in this and they've gone on that journey. So very much the first thing is about it is about how can you help the talent, the TA team, resourcing team, position it and see the business value of bringing, not the business value of how you attract great talent into the organization. Obviously, great talent in the organization, that's how we grow the business, but the process of doing that. And then, there's the other thing that you touched on there is when we run these workshops, a big part of how we do that is the way that we talk about this is basically imagine a shelf on the wall and it's got lots of books, and the books are designed to gather certain ingredients that we need, that when we look at them on the table, it helps us think strategically and tactically about the journey that we need to go on. And we often have we have what's called play. So there's lots of games that we do in these workshops, and one of them, it's really, really simple, really, really simple thing to do is we want to uncover stories. So a lot of organizations, I mean, I'm sure you all know, and people listening, there are lots of people in an organization who have an incredible tale to tell that lots of people have just never ever heard. And the secret is trying to uncover them and match them to the EVP or the culture, the values, aspiration of that organization is. I'm really trying to find out the human element, and in there is often the emotional storyline that can connect with those that you want to connect with. And so I mean, it's literally like, hey, what are your values? What's your aspirational culture? Or, what is your EVP? And we sort of put it out there and we say, look, actions prove who you are. Words just prove who you want to be. So just writing it down means nothing. It's about behaviors and blah, blah, blah. And we literally then bring people in and they start sharing stories. In fact, I'll tell you a story, actually. I'll tell you a story. It's just coming to my head now. So Matthew Jeffrey, if you're there, Matt, hello, mate. So he asked me to speak at SAP's Global TA Conference. Right. I was in last month. And he's like, look, can we do some kind of workshop? And I'm like, okay. So I'm thinking about what we can do. And there's like 350 people. And I was like, wouldn't it be cool if we could, you've got the global TA team here from all around the world. I was like, my God, this could be amazing to capture stories, but at scale. I was thinking, how the hell are we going to do this? So we broke them up into 16 groups.
Right, yeah.
And I did a talk about the power of storytelling. And we got 16 incredible stories. There was one story about, I've forgotten what their EVP statement is, like, become the best you are, be the best you can be, or something like this. Yeah. And it was challenging everybody out there to say, hey, when you read this, what story makes you feel it?
Yeah.
What really makes you feel this story?
Yeah.
And there was a lady whose story brought everyone to tears. And when she finished it, the entire room stood up and gave her a round of applause. And I've never seen anything like it. I was like, and this lady from Iran. And she tried to come up from Iran. She had nothing. She couldn't speak English or anything. And so from SAP supported her. They gave her a chance. And now she's like, and she's just like, so it was just incredible being there at that moment. And that's what that thing's about. That's like,
that's the moment.
And that's the moment then. And then what we do, activate all that kind of stuff. So that is one really cool thing I do.
Yeah, no, indeed. We've lost your face for a second, by the way, but I'm sure it will return in a minute. But we've got a funny computer chip thing instead. But the thing about telling stories and finding the things inside an organization that do you look at the kind of, because one of the things I've sort of looked at before is trying to find the stories that like-minded people would engage or are emotionally, and often that's quite, and particularly when you talk about techies and talking about people with very specific defined skill sets, they're often quite difficult to find or difficult to attract. We've looked at sort of zones where the more geeky those stories, the more particularly wacky and almost like over our heads the stories, the more it engaged people who were just like them, because it was almost like they're playing in the same park as each other. They're not attracted by the stuff that's in the big park. They're attracted by the stuff that's in their sandpit. and then trying to work around the content around that. Do you think that's an important part of it as well? Because it's an emotional intelligence, but also emotional connection, sorry, I should say, but also a professional connection too, a kind of like a you're like us kind of thing.
Yeah. So if you take the past storytelling as a concept, so the most famous one is Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, and Hollywood have used this for years, blah blah blah. But the concept of the reluctant hero becoming a hero, that's a journey that they go on. Okay, so the way we sort of think about it is very, very similar in the world of talent attraction, because what you're doing is you're identifying who the reluctant hero is for your persona mapping, so the techie person, right? And you get to know what you want to do is you want to help them over time throughout a funnel, whatever you call it. You want them to see themselves in the hero in the organization. So the Star Wars analogy of this is Luke Skywalker is a reluctant hero. He meets Obi-Wan Kenobi. He's great in it and says, I believe in you. I think you can become a Jedi like your father and help save the planet and blah, 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 save Princess Leia and all this kind of stuff. And he doesn't believe in it first. So he goes away, something happens, he thinks about changing it again, he goes back to Obi-Wan, I believe in your father, and he's a lightsaber. And then he mentors him and passes on to Yoda, mentors him, and he becomes a Jedi and blah, blah, blah. And who knows what's going to happen in the next episode of Star Wars, but there you go. Now if we can find the employees and the hero stories and the things that excite them about working there, and the things that they're interested in, not just stuff that excites about working. That sort of information, and if it's told through the hero and the reflective, reluctant hero, that the tech story is going to connect. Yeah. Now, obviously, if it's your story, it's not going to connect. You know, so it's different stories, different conditions. Yeah, right. You know, the story that might be more technical that goes over someone's head, or somebody else in the publicity of that story who is interested in that stuff is going to lack it. Now we have a connection. Now stuff. And we just planning stuff at the moment. Quite some big stuff with BT. You know, you have creative concepts and content that supports that, and then when you amplify that at what stage of the funnel and what messages you're saying helps people come through it. And basically, you want to have a conversation that's of interest to you, or you are being interested in them to bring them. You're absolutely right. A tech conversation to be probably a tech conversation.
They believe in the same standard of work as well, and all those sort of things that matter to people of that kind of ilk. Basically, why would they move to somebody who's very different or no better than themselves? So, just a suggestion on the right hand side, Dave, that if you hover over your image, there's like a little selection thing at the top. And if you click the toggle video one, I think that's what Joe's suggesting. I think that's Louise actually on the right hand side. Click that; it might just refresh your screen, because we can't see you at the moment, and you're a handsome man. So why would?
Aren't you looking?
Why would? Although somebody quite likes you in purple, all we can see is a purple Space Invader at the moment. So we're just having to reconnect. Can you still hear me, Dave? Because I'm going to. It's in a refresh. Thanks for the questions on the right, guys. I'm going to cover those before we move on. I think Dave is doing a little reconnect, isn't he? So he can't hear me at the moment. That's fine. Okay, he's just going to be coming back in a second. But yeah, do keep the pictures coming in. Do keep the questions coming in. Just to make sure I'm clarifying the questions. All right. Oh, Dave's lost himself. Let me try and find Dave again. Hang on a second. Somebody tell Dave that we've not lost him. Next time we do this, we'll have to get Dave in London, where he's right. Right, I'm refreshing Dave, so he's on the way back in. Jacob, you're asking about the audit. before the thing. We'll ask Dave about that, as to what they do in that, because I think that sounds like it's part of his questionnaire thing that he deals with to start with, about trying to get the real stories and things like that. I think he maybe covered on that a little bit. And we haven't touched user-generated content yet, Jacob, so we'll definitely do that as well. Hopefully we'll have Dave Butler in the middle. He knows more about this stuff than I do. I can only fill for so long. And Jeremy you mentioned cost, Dave, but do you work with companies to understand the impact the work has on the quality of hire? Okay, great. I'll ask that question as well. As soon as we get Dave back on the screen, it should be any moment. And Steve, I don't tell jokes, mate. I can never remember them. I spend most of my life listening to jokes. I love comedy, but I can't fill in the jokes. Oh, Dave's answering the questions on the right hand side. We're going to have a text rather than a webinar going on here. One of the questions I'm going to ask Dave is whether he will. What's more important, data versus emotion in content? Because I think I'm a big emotional response kind of dude, but I think Dave's a proper marketer rather than me, so he'll probably look at data far more than me. Let's see if I'll message. Has Dave been caught? he's using Costa Coffees or something downstairs. Costa Coffees and Wi-Fi. Let's see if we can get Dave back. I'm just going to Dave. I'm just saying to Dave, I'll refresh you again. I'm just doing a bit of a refresh of Dave because it's not happening. All right, come on, Dave. I haven't mentioned, by the way, I missed this earlier. It's quite important because these guys look after us. Candidate ID, who are our sponsors and supporters of this, they the world's first talent pipeline software, which is really apt for this whole conversation because content is at the heart of how great talent pipelining happens and how the candidate ID software works. So it kind of helps have a good content program. So these two things align very well together. But I'm an advisor and ambassador for these guys, and I think they're fantastic. It's a bit of recruitment tech that genuinely is making waves. I'm still waiting for Dave to get back on. He moved earlier from an office room into the accounts room, and I don't think the accounts like it very much, and clearly that's where it's not working. That's I think Dave might just end up answering questions on the right hand side down here at the moment. Slightly different to the usual webinar. This is where two guests helps, doesn't it? As well, we'll stick to the two guest thing for future. So at least we can buffer talking to the other one while we're waiting for the other one to get ready again. All right. Sorry, guys. Sorry for the pause here. Technology. Yeah, I'm thinking about that, Jeremy, as to whether we'll reconvene in 5 minutes or so. Yeah, Peter, I'll talk about candidate ID for 5 minutes. Something about that. I need Adam Golden on here to do that. Yeah, for those who don't know what candidate ID is, and the reason why Mr. RecTech Cynic here, because I'm not very good with recruitment technology, because I find a lot of it's hard work. The reason I like this, the work that I do with companies, is around how do we attract people towards your organization through a degree of magnetism, and identifying people who are like-minded to the company, who like what the company are about, finding those kind of moments of connection that means a person genuinely wants to work for that organization. So that's kind of the stuff that I typically do with companies, and we do it through a lot of discovery through social media and content marketing and that kind of stuff. And it's done we always do it quite manually from a point of view of trying to work out who it is who's connecting with our content and working out who is responding to the email marketing and the journeys that we would take with those people. But you've sort of got a point where you recognize a limited amount of things. When people engage with your content, you'll get a lot, you get a notification that you've got a click, there'll be a click through, or a portion of an email that you've sent will tell the journey, or your Google Analytics will tell you where the source of a page view comes from, and that's kind of fine. But a lot of those were kind of hidden or unidentifiable. So candidate ID is this clever bit of kit that allows you to put those people that you've either sourced or had attracted to you previously into the top end of the funnel, and with a content marketing program takes those candidates, as those candidates work their way through the talent funnel towards the point of interest in your organization. There are different touch points which trigger point scoring systems, basically, which means you can prioritize the 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 people that are in your talent pipeline based on how engaged they are with your company, and it allows your recruiters to pick up the phone to the right people before the wrong people. Brilliant bit of kit that does a lot of that journey automatically from a point of view of identifying who's closer to the point of hire ready, versus us hanging around working out of the vast pool which one we should be contacting as recruiters. Good timing. I just finished a little synopsis of candidate ID for the guys who are asking.
What's going on? What is going on? Dear me.
So, well, that's all right. It said it must be the account rebelling on you, mate. They're all on Facebook and using all the Wi-Fi they can get.
Oh, God.
Good to see you again, mate. Good to see you again.
Day two.
Well, part 2, and we might have lost some people along the way, but that's all right. It all goes out afterwards. So look, one of the things I wanted to a couple of questions here on the kind of journey you're going through the companies, and the kind of content you're considering putting out there, and the decisions that are made for the right kind of content and how it should be distributed. What matters more? Data and knowledge from what's out there in the field, or emotional? What do you have an either or do you have it's got to be a combined?
Both.
Or I thought you both.
So I mean, I was just looking at one of the questions from Jacob, and I was answering it while I was
nice one, thanks.
Yeah. So I mean, obviously I've short-circuited part of our process that we've been shaping across over how many years. Now we don't get creative until we've probably gone through about 40-50% of our process. So it is about gathering ingredients. So when I talk about discovery and insights, we run a load of series of workshops, but we also do a lot of voice of the customer, or in this case, voice of the candidate. And so that's actually insight driven in speaking to them. So you've got data tells you what, and humans tell you why. So so let me just think about that. So some people may have heard us talk, what we did with Virgin Media and the candidate experience stuff and all that we did. Now, initially, when we first started looking at it, it was like, okay, what's the data telling us? And blah, blah, blah. And we knew that the NPS was -27. We figured out that 6% of candidates were cancelling their TiVo boxes at a £4.5 million cost. That's the data. It's telling you what is happening. But when we speak to people, that's when we hear why. More so. Now, don't get me wrong, data can sort of inform that, but it's the human insight and your interpretation of that, which then gives you that feeling of what's going on. Now, Louise, the hairdresser, when we spoke to her, you know, she was really pissed off. So, you know, the way her perception, her expectation of Virgin was, this is going to be a great place to work. It's down the road. I need some part-time hours. I've got a couple of kids. I'm a hairdresser. I think it can work for this. And, you know, they're a great company to work for. This is my perception. When she got in there, it was horrendous. When she got in there, the experience was shocking. You know, the hiring manager had a terrible impact. And when she got there, it wasn't great. It wasn't what she expected. And she told all her friends, you know, and what we asked her was about how does she feel? You know, it wasn't like, I think this, it was, I felt terrible. I wasn't expecting this. Therefore, I carried these things out. Now, there is data and insights kind of right there. Yeah. So, and it's trying to figure that out, you know, and I mean, there's loads of stories where we've got data and then part of the process, we do discovery and insight. So this voice of the customer thing is right. We want to do some user groups. That can be segmented horizontally, vertically, different roles, all kinds of different stuff. People in process, people who've just touched the recruitment process, people who've just onboarded, people in there a long time, people who've exited the business, external research, and it's trying to get data. But we do quite a lot of telephone interviews, and the telephone interviews are quite good because if they're not sat in front of you, they don't sugarcoat the answers. So we get some really good insights, and then you know it's actually quite a big piece of work. It's actually quite a big piece of work that goes on. And then there are other tools that whereby, from a data point of view and from a sentiment point of view, we'll look at, well, what's the language of the questions that people are asking? What's the really type of content, types of assets, long form, short form, video, assets, wide type posts, how-to posts, listable, all these different tactics within content. And are we trying to inspire, entertain, educate, or convince them? And we gather all this information and go, hey, you know, now we've got all of this stuff. How do we now apply design thinking to it? So we've got all of this stuff. What we're trying to do is distill it down with lenses to go, there's the concepts that we want to run with. And then we test them. And the thing is, you know, you're always testing. So you're always looking at the performance and saying, hey, you know, how's this engaging? How's this content working for us? Is it doing what we want? Is it getting shared? Is it getting amplification? Is it driving conversions, applications, communities, whatever? And you never stop learning. That's probably the other thing that doesn't happen enough in talent. You know, is if you look at the e-commerce world and the B2C world, you're obsessed with conversion rate optimization. So, you know, when people touch the content, what happens next, and what is that content trying to achieve? So, we're doing a piece of work with SAP at the moment. Who, you know, I can't give you the exact numbers, but they see tens of thousands of visitors, millions to their global careers website. And if we can improve their conversion rate on their job application pages by 5%, that's a huge saving. A huge saving for them. Now, in the world of e-commerce, Amazon will change the buy button by a pixel. Right? Okay. Google to find what was it? The blue, you know, the blue link, the color of the blue link. They've gone through every conceivable Pantone blue by shade to find the best one that attracts a click.
It's amazing, isn't it? Really,
you know. So that's obviously data heavy, but you know we don't. I mean, we don't have to change pixels, but Christ, I mean, if you got someone to a job description and they're starting to show interest, surely you want to try and figure out if that's a really good candidate and if we want them or put them off or do whatever. But it's certainly something to be thinking about. You know, job descriptions, we don't work hard enough with them. You know, you look at a product page for John Lewis. I mean, it's the structure and the wireframe of a page there to engage emotionally, rationally, to answer questions, to think about the objectives that you've got, and to make it easy to purchase. You know, we're not in that world yet in talent. We're nowhere near that type of thing.
No, that'd be amazing if we were. I get it. So, look, thinking that we've gone this journey of building a series of pieces of content, stories. You built some stories that need to come out. What's the most effective? What's your advice to people on the most effective way to get that out there with the greatest effect? I mean, what are the routes to market that have the greatest success in your view? What are the components you have to consider in that process?
Yeah, in terms of amplifying content.
Yeah, because one thing creating it, isn't there? But the other thing doesn't go anywhere or nobody sees it.
Well, that's right. So, you know, about you know, people get obsessed with content, and if they haven't got an audience, it's screwed. So, you it's actually, as you're planning and setting it up, it's like, okay, well, who is the audience? Who is the audience for this content? Where do they go? So what pubs are they in? And what some people try to do is they try and be in too many channels and do too much at once, and it's diluted, and you're not giving yourself a fair crack, if you like. But you have to have an audience that A, sees it, B, is interested in it, and then C, actually cares about it. And I think one of the things is again, I'll come back to some of the stuff we're working on at the moment. We're looking at creative concepts.
Yeah.
So say we've got creative concept A, that's a campaign around how we bring a community together of tech. Then there's lots of subject matter around that then that supports that we want to amplify in front of the world of tech, but we want to look for influencers who have communities of tech already. So let's say, I'm just saying, let's say there's exhibition or conference A, and that's for cybersecurity and tech and blah, 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 and they've got an active audience. What you need to do is try and figure out, well, how could I get them to help me leverage my content? That takes time. If you look at me, okay, I'm speaking to you today because 4 years ago, I created a list of about 30 influencers in recruitment and started to network with them online. Fast forward 4 years, and speaking events and speaking to people like you and doing all this stuff, it's a cornerstone of our own marketing machine. So the first thing is, don't expect it to happen overnight, because it doesn't. You're going to need an audience. Influencer marketing is a really good tactic in terms of identifying it. And there's tools to do that. BuzzSumo can help you do that. Follow on, lots of tools. But then you've got to be prepared to put some consistent effort in. Just creating a piece of content is not going to go stellar. Hardly anything goes viral. People think they're going to create something viral. It's not going to happen. There's loads of effort that goes into that. The other thing that's interesting at the moment, which we're looking a lot at, is employee advocacy. So how do you not only find the stories and make your employees the heroes, if you like, and the stories that help you get out the message of experience, but how do you make it really easy for them to share those stories in micro communities that expands? So so customer advocacy is massive in B2B, B2C, but employee advocacy and how we help people do that, that's an interesting one. And then there's lots of other tactics. Amplifying content across what we call custom audiences in Facebook can be really, really effective. But ultimately, you've got to think about your audience, what content they're interested in. And if you haven't got the audience, you've got to think, part of my plan has to build that audience. And it may well be simply one of the tactics is you don't create the content. You reach out, make friends with, say, the top 10, 15 influencers of the tech world, say in the UK. You make friends with them and then interview them about their hopes and fears and the changes and trends and all this kind of stuff in tech. And then it's your brand-led content, which they share into their communities, and it gives you an opportunity, based on the questions you ask them, to now ask the wider community what their opinion is. And now you're speaking to that community and they start to recognize your brand. That's influencer marketing 101, basically.
I'm massive influencer. That's how I started my agency, Cloud9, right at the start, was we identified and put a bunch of people who were the early talkers about social media in the industry. And we've worked out what did they talk about, where did they go, which pubs did they drink in, which events did they go to, sit in the same tables, do some stuff with them. And I think if anything now, I've seen it rise to be even more importantly in that industry over the last few months, even more so. But user generated content or employee generated content, I should bring it in. Interesting area. I know Jacob wanted me to bring this up because there's quite a lively discussion on LinkedIn started by Ted Meulenkamp from Roche, talking about and it came around to employee advocacy versus social media amplification and blah blah and lady from Cisco, Carrie, in America, talked about their kind of employee-generated content being such a massive part. How have you looked into that very much, or have you done some stuff with that? And what's your feeling on and how easy or difficult it is to produce something like that? Because it sounds like a long program to get into place. Sounds like a utopia, doesn't it? But it's it's quite an interesting one, this, because user-generated content in the B2C world is something that Google loves, and it's really important, and it's very much social evidence-based and social proof and all that kind of stuff. When we step into this world, it is a really interesting one. Employee advocacy is definitely, I see employee advocacy, first of all, I think of that as a channel to market, because
they are a channel. So let's say Utopia was in place, and let's say in the tech world, I had a team of, let's just say 50 tech people. They were engaged, and we had great content that was based on their stories and their hero stories and the tales that must be told that they like, because we're making them the hero. We help them. We draw it out to them. They don't have to create it, because if you make them create it, it'll never get done. So first of all, if it's not easy, it ain't going to work full stop anyway, because you're not going to motivate them to do it because they're too busy writing code. But if there was something of interest to them, we started to draw it out of them, and we had a framework for that to happen. And let's say if I take Dan, who works for us, Dan is one of the UK's leading developers. He's actually written code that sits within Umbraco, and he's got a really big following now. If we started to interview him or just talk to him about it, rather than say, Dan, will you write me a blog about all this stuff? Because he's just not going to do it. There's just no chance. But if we were to say, okay, Dan, you do this, and we want to talk to you. We want to do we want to do a series of, and the making of, or whatever it may be. And we know that's of interest because technically he's quite ahead of. He's really good, and other developers look to him for answers for stuff. So in that microcosm there, we've now made it easy for him to tell us a story about stuff that's of interest to tech, not about jobs, about what's interesting to tech. But the byproduct is he might talk about what it's like to work at PH and jingle time and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
We create that. He will share it, right? As will his colleagues.
Yeah, totally.
Right? So we've now got a series of blogs, just let's call it blogs.
Yeah.
Well written, of interest, subject matter. His team are now sharing it. That's now going amplified through advocacy into other communities. Yeah. The challenge is doing that on scale.
Yeah, of course.
That's where the challenge is.
Yeah.
So there are platforms that help you do it. So I think there is some real smart plays to be done in employee advocacy marketing, and it does need the employee content, but it's how you make that happen and how that fits into the overall strategic direction of your content strategy. Because the moment you say to people, you have to go and create it,
they won't do it.
Yeah. They won't do it. And that's where it falls down. So there's technology that makes it easy to share it and all this kind of stuff. And measure, actually, there's like Social Chorus does some really cool stuff. But it's how do we create a framework that's in line with our content strategy in terms of attracting talent, and how do we make it easy? Because if we have to keep motivating, they ain't going to do it. Now, there's a real good case study actually. This is B2B for IBM around this. So it's not talent, but what they did is, and you'd expect them to have the technical wherewithal, or whatever you want to call it, that allows them to simply create advocacy. But they don't. But they had this campaign. It's going back a few years now. If you Google IBM employee advocacy, it'll come up. And actually, something else I need to tell you. What happened is they did this. I've forgotten the hashtag, but in like 24 hours, the page that they'd basically been talking about had 1.2 million views. Wow. Yeah. And it just went mad. And they started by creating a small team of internal people who they trained. They showed how to do social, but these people were passionate about it.
Yeah.
And they did it through them.
Yeah.
And once it was successful, more people joined, and they broke off into groups.
Yes.
And each group has a social champion.
Yeah.
And basically it filters down.
Yeah.
And it did really, really well. Now, I think part of what the problem is in the world of talent is, A, we don't make it easy for them, and B, sometimes the organizations are just terrified of what the hell is going to happen. And that's a little bit, I get that, I get it, but really, if they're going to talk about work on social, they're going to talk about work on social.
Regardless,
you know what I mean?
Right.
So,
The challenge is, do you create experiences that make them want to do it? I always love it when you see a company, a great example, going back 2 or 3 years now, but an old client of mine was Kaplan International Colleges, the big e-learning company, and they and I placed quite a bunch of people in there as a recruitment person, and we're all sorts of nationalities and all the rest of it, and there was no employee engagement advocacy thing. There was no forced structure in place. But the guys who are my Facebook friends and Twitter friends, they just naturally put content about stuff that was going, show pictures of things that were going on, because they were proud to work for their company because they did stuff that engaged that. I realized that's something that was way before the whole kind of getting employees to get involved. You have to have a culture in place that allows people, that encourages people to be so happy to work there that they're happy to share this kind of stuff. But I loved it. I loved that there was this very natural sharing of stuff because they were proud of the company they worked for because of X, Y, Z. And that's the thing. It's quite difficult with larger companies, isn't it? Sometimes to get that same kind of degree of heart, passion behind some of that stuff.
It is hard to get it aligned. I mean, Cisco do some good stuff, and they'll have like a team will take over the channels for a week. We do stuff with IHG, and we plan 3 months forward. So let's say let's pick front of house staff. You know, this is like European content. We will say, right, we've got 16 hotels that are our hero hotels, if you like. And they're the sources that are engaged in this. And we will plan and say in 3 months, this is coming about front of house staff. And for a week, we want to talk about this and this is subject. So we will then get on the phone, interview these people and create this content. You know, so there's different ways of achieving it, you know. And then there's other things like, you know, we've worked with companies where we've said to them, you have a WhatsApp group and you're, you know, in your teams, create this culture of being aware of stories that are going on when people have done above and beyond or demonstrate stuff, and send it to marketing through the WhatsApp group, and then they can decide, is it usable, you know? So it's just been sometimes a little bit more clever about it.
A question on the right side from Jacob, which Audra has kind of chipped into as well, about does the cost of professionally made videos justify the ROI with regard to company content? What have you seen and experienced in this respect? Yeah, is it? I mean, because Audra's point afterwards, I like as well about the fact that low budget videos sometimes have more of an impact because they feel more human. Quite a popular song at the moment.
Yeah, so I mean, we've just built a film department, funny enough, and we've got an actual film director. So it's horses for courses, I would say. And also, if you look at, you know, if you look at human behavior. So if I look at Louis, who's my son, 12, you look at Generation Z, they're more obsessed with video content than you know, everything's on. So what's, you know, I'm just thinking, I've got loads of answers to this question. Basically, an expensive video done poorly is crap. Do you know what I mean? So an expensive video that is a center pillar of what you're trying to achieve over time can be very valuable. So, you know, we've got some stuff coming out with BT in the next 12 months that is not just part of talent attraction, but actually, I think will help change the perception of some of the customer service around BT. Now, that's quite interesting, is how does your talent brand influence consumer behavior? Because those emotional feel-good stories, if you like, or the things that you didn't expect, and it changes your perception of an organization, can change the way you think and feel about it as a consumer. Because BT obviously has this thing around customer service, but when you dig under, there's some fascinating stuff that goes on. And then to Audra's point, you know, the kids don't mind, get it on there and off they go. I mean, you know, Facebook Live, how you can use that's going to evolve. So it is horses for courses. I mean, you know, for example, I was reading a stat the other day that 80% of videos on Facebook are never listened to. You know, so, you know, they don't necessarily play them or put the sound on, but they'll watch it. So then what does that mean? So how is that affecting human behavior? And what does it mean? You know, the attention span, how long is it? Is it bite-sized chunks? So the answer, I've seen video that's done well, and, you know, it's hit the money, you know, I mean, and I've seen video that's done poor. I mean, the classic corporate videos and headshots, and I mean, that's just all kind of staged. Yeah, but bringing fun and humor, you know, I mean, it might be, and it's also, what is the success metric of the video? You know, so we're working with a client at the moment, I can't say who it is, and they have this community hub for the engineering world that is incredible. And what they create for inventors does stuff that's a first on the planet. And you take what that's done, right? And at the moment, this is how we help our customers. But if you were to take that concept and say, here's the people behind the scenes helping people make that, and show that story and how exciting it is to do that, that's a talent attraction video, an employer branding video. You know, so it's how you cut it up. But video is not going away. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. I'm the same as you. My son, both my sons, 10 and 7, it's everything now. They don't switch on the TV anymore. They search YouTube. for content. They consume things through video. I think it's just the part of the way we've got to adapt to life. It's whether we can make as good. It's interesting to see how they evolve. There was a brilliant, a really successful recruitment company that I've spent a bit of time with recently. I said to them when I was looking at their stuff, the best bit, they've done all these brilliant videos on their employee experience. Really good. I mean, they're really, really good stuff. The most poignant video they made was not on their employee experience page. It was on their company page. And it was the CEO who talking on Tooting Common with his phone like this, just decided while he was walking the dog in the morning to kind of thought, I'm going to just outline the reasons why we're making a big change to the company and how we're going to treat people. And this it was 7 or 8 minutes, so it wasn't a short thing. It was quite long. There was a bit of storytelling going on. But it was brilliant. It was one of the most brilliantly heartfelt bits of smart business community. And it made me want to work for that company. It made me go, I want to work for this company. And there's a company who've got 92% retention for a recruitment agency. And you can see why, because so it was amazing how something as simple as that, as something as spontaneous as that has just as much, if not more effect than so it's just capturing it.
It's the human element.
Totally.
You know, it's how he's caught the moment of the human nature of what's behind the scenes. People are always interested in the humans behind the keyboards, I suppose. You know, it's how we show that. And rightly so, you know, if it's high gloss, high production, but doesn't feel authentic, it kills it. It does. It does kill it. You know, and Audra's just saying there about the $1 shave, you know, that wouldn't have been big productions, but that made him world famous. But somebody's thought about the content within it, just because he hasn't spent a fortune making it.
Thing.
The script and the way it's done is genius.
Absolutely.
Genius, you know, and somebody's thought about that. Now it might be him. I don't know how it came up. You know, and they've been now bought by was it Unilever? They were bought last year for about £1 billion or some ridiculous figure. So you know, fair play to him. Turned right for him. Definitely.
Well, look, it's because because of our delays, we've overrun anyway, so I allowed a little bit more time. But we are hitting 5 o'clock, which probably means we're kind of moving on to the next stage. Anything else you want to share quickly before? Is there any quick stories you wanted to share before we leave? We should probably.
No, Liverpool in the Champions League. That's good news.
I'm a season ticket holder at Brighton, and they got promoted this year. So
it's happy days, isn't it?
My kids are delighted. So I'm a Forest fan, so I don't get so much success as that anymore.
No, never mind.
Well, look, Dave, thank you. Really appreciate your time, and thanks for riding through the technical difficulties, and thanks everybody who's with us for riding through the tech difficulties and all that kind of stuff. Really appreciate that, Dave. And for those on our next one next week, Audra on the right-hand channel is on it next week with Ben Gledhill from Manchester Metropolitan Uni, talking about employer brand on a budget for those companies that don't have a lot of money to spend on this kind of stuff. So we're going to hear some good stories from those guys. And thanks again, Dave. That was absolutely brilliant. And this video is available to download afterwards, so you can always watch it afterwards. I don't know if I can do any editing to get rid of that little 10-minute bit in the middle, but you fast forward. Thanks, everybody, and really appreciate it, Dave.
Cheers, guys. Cheers, mate. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.